listening to Power Talks with Beth Ann and Melody Peterson, where talk is real, truth is in the talk, and there is absolute power in truth and Power Talks. Welcome to Power Talks. I'm Beth Ann. Say good morning to my partner, Melody, as we co-host together and empower you with the truth. At least we hope we empower you with the truth. Good morning, Melody.
Good morning, Beth. Good morning, listeners. Boy, there's lots to talk about today, from North Korea to California to all the way back to Las Vegas. And you have several things on Corker, and so let's get started. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the fires.
All right.
Because, everything, all we've got is this political jargon, which I think is exactly what it is. There's things we need to know. We're still sorting through in Las Vegas and everything. But, lives are being upset around this nation with the hurricanes and the fires, and nobody's talking about that anymore. So let's talk about the fires, because these people, my heart just rips. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I've seen some pictures, and it's really bizarre. These fires just took off by powerful winds that ripped through the Napa Valley, Sonoma, Mendocino counties yesterday. At least 11 people have been killed. Dozens are injured, destroying more than 1,500 homes and businesses and turning wineries just to ashes. Now, a lot of these 1,500 homes are multi-million-dollar homes. And I saw pictures of Walmart burning up. And so businesses of all kinds have been affected. So this all started, it's blackened about 103,000 acres. It blanketed much of the Bay Area in smoke. And there were like 100 people that were treated at hospitals for injuries that included burns and smoke inhalation. 2 patients with severe burns were in critical condition at the Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital. Now, I don't know if one of those have perhaps succumbed, and that's what bumped this report shows 10 people killed, and this morning they upped it to 11. So not sure if one of those with those severe burns are one of those that has passed on. Hundreds of firefighters have streamed into the region. They've used helicopters to rescue 42 people. And it wasn't like they were waiting around. They said it just came up just like that. They were looking into the cause of the fire. They were burning thousands of acres in Lake, Butte, and Yuba counties in Southern California. Meanwhile, residents in and around Anaheim and Orange County were under evacuation orders as a fire raged uncontrolled, destroying at least 24 structures in a different fire. And the fires are occurring. They have had record-setting heat and persistent drought.
Yes.
And I know I have a radio station in San Bernardino, the Riverside area, so forth, KMET, and, they were talking about the heat earlier in June, and they were really concerned because lots of times with this severe heat, you have earthquakes. They combine the two together when you have the drought, because the ground gets so dry, and they, I guess residents of California think that there is some sort of connection between and then they're just not having high temperatures. It's not 85 to 90. We're talking 85 to 105. I mean, they're having extreme heat over the summertime. So these fires began to ignite Sunday, and they just multiplied as they went on. And there's power failures are widespread. People flocked to gas stations in cities that were safe from fires to fuel up and buy water and other supplies. I wouldn't want to be at a gas station when there's fires.
Oh, my gosh.
But anyway, they have evacuation centers were set up, and
I heard, too, last evening, and maybe you just said that and I didn't hear you, that they expect the death toll to go higher because there's a lot of people not accounted for yet.
There's over 100 people, I believe, that have not been accounted for.
So did they escape or have were they trapped? or lost in the fire somehow. These things are devastating.
I would think the majority of them were ones that have escaped, and you just don't think about checking in. Who would if I escaped a fire, I wouldn't check in with government to say here I am. That would be one of the last things on my list to do. But so terrible fires. You had the fires up in Montana earlier this year over the. No one talked about those fires, and there was just areas that were devastated. What was really weird, and I've seen pictures of these, I'm not quite sure where in California, whether it was in Napa or wherever, but they showed these residential places, and what struck me as weird is here you'd have structures totally burned to the ground, but yet maybe 100 yards beyond that, there's just trees with greenery, like a tornado, when it goes down the street, sometimes you wonder why it misses
destroys
the house
all,
next.
Leaves one alone.
And it sort of reminded me of that this fire just went through there, took its course, but did leave some of the greenery on the trees, which I found a little interesting. But there's a lot of videos online. A lot of people took pictures as they were trying to escape. They couldn't even see driving down the road through these flames, through the smoke. They didn't know if they were on the road, off the road. And so, there really is no escaping fire sometimes, and that's it's scary. Fire is very scary. So
it is very scary. It's I didn't witness it. They saved me that much, and that's a story that I am going to write a book. I'm working on that in my head. I haven't really started it yet. I started one about 3 years ago, and I started with the preface. Why am I doing this? But that is I did not witness it, but my husband watched it. And they have just let it burn to the ground, and it was devastating. The loss is everything, but the children were in school, and one was with me, so that was not a loss. And with the families that are experiencing this right now, it's something that it affects the rest of your life. You recoup from it, but it still affects the rest of your life. I still find myself, and I've lived longer since that fire than I did prior to that fire, and I still find myself looking for things that existed prior to that. And I know that sounds odd, but you think, well, I had one of those. Where is that? Where did I put that? I had one of those. Oh, that was pre-fire. I don't have one of those. So you still find yourself doing that, and not as much as years go on, but there's still times when I find myself thinking, well, I need to go find that. I know I've got that somewhere, and then I realize that I don't have that somewhere. But yeah, it's devastating, and I would think the flood victims, what they've gone through with the hurricane and all that, going through that rubble, whether you find anything or don't find anything, or the broken pieces, or the messed up pictures of family and ruined this or that, and that goes back. We need to do a show on being prepared. There's some things you're never prepared for. But those who had to leave in a hurry, that we pray that that's where these are, these people that are missing yet, that they are gone. Did they, did they prepare for a quick getaway, so to speak? Did they have a bug out bag and things that they needed right there at hand that they could pick up and go? And I can't emphasize enough, and I'm one of those that's guilty. I'm not always ready. But we need to encourage our listeners, just like we talk about with the gold and silver, to be ready with our finances. We need to be ready to leave if we have to leave. And I think that's something we always put off till tomorrow. And we need to start not doing that. I think as we look around this nation and see what's happening with the violence, the fact that we are so divided as a people, and just the tragedies that are hitting us, with the hurricanes and the fires. The fires have been bad out west, and that's a topic for another for another day as to why these fires are so devastating. And
they're still searching. Yeah, they're still searching. For the start of these fires, but if it was arson, it was certainly timed perfectly. They had powerful winds that they just didn't have a chance, with those winds. The one lady says they had wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour.
Well, they were having fires out there, and so I would assume that the winds just fed it, and it did almost come up overnight. I mean, just like that, and in this area anyway. But it's devastating. We need to be in prayer for so many around this nation, and we need to be prayer for this nation.
And I think today you'd mentioned the finances. Today we have gold up $8 this morning, $12.92. So we'll see if she stays there. Silver's up 21 cents today, $17.27. So folks, I don't know what you're waiting for. We had a nice pullback in silver. And yes, we can grumble and moan and groan because, they manipulate the prices to the downside. But at least this gives us a buying opportunity to get these precious metals because they're going to be so needed in your portfolio. I was looking up some things about the Great Recession. By the summer of 2007, you had the investment banks, you had the Federal Reserve. They were all struggling trying to contain the fallout from the from the mortgage meltdown and the crisis that was really just beginning and so forth. And August 2007 is where they actually mark the beginning of the financial crisis. Well, if the beginning of the financial crisis began August 2007, the S&P continued to close at a record on October 9th, 2007. So these record highs that we're seeing should really be telling you something. There's very little upside potential to gain, to risk, to being in these markets. And when you look at gold, there's so much upside potential, very little downside. When you look at the stock market, all you see is downside. I mean, how much higher can it go? Even if people talk about 30,000, really? Are you going to risk it? Do you really think that there's enough positive going on in this country to risk your money? To thinking that maybe because of these, these pundits on these mainstream media programs, you really don't have that many that are coming out and saying that's going to 30,000. Most of them are saying that's going to crash because there's absolutely no fundamentals underneath them to support these levels. So again, these are buying opportunities for gold, silver. Platinum was up $14 today at $934. Palladium was up $6 at $939. That means there's a lot of pressure on the dollar once again today, down 0.46 at 93.26. And crude oil was up big, up over $1 at 50.62. So crude oil is beginning to like that $50 level. And if we go into any crises, I certainly think that we'll, with North Korea, we'll certainly see those oil prices go. But the stock markets are all up today, too. So everything's up, everything's green, everything is hunky-dory.
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 I knew that was, oh my gosh, that's scary.
No. But
we're going to hear the music here shortly, but I have a little article here that it's just, why are we in such a mess in this country? And this is about a school teacher. So when we come back from this break, I want to discuss this just a little bit. I didn't tell you I had this article, but this school teacher, what she did, and school's not apologizing, but I think
they are.
And
we're also going to talk about North Korea, too. So.
Yeah, we need to talk about North Korea. Well, we're going into our large segment, so we'll have plenty of time. I'm going to give the phone number out, 717-300-1218, 717-300-1218. Remember to support Power Talks by using dgscoins.com, discount gold and silver trading with Melody, and we'll give that number too, 800-375-4188. That's 1-800-375-4188. Melody and Beth Ann will be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more, using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. Your calls are welcome at 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. Well, this is a middle school teacher I want to talk about just a little bit before we get into the heavy discussion with North Korea. If you wonder what's wrong with our schools, this is it right here. That's why I tell you over and over and over again, at least on CSC Talk Radio, how important it is, the local elections, including your school board, who will hire these teachers. Well, the parents were outraged, and this is a Georgia middle school teacher. She was caught assigning students a disturbing lesson. The unidentified Shiloh middle school teacher asked her students to draw a Nazi mascot. The year is 1935, and you have been tasked with creating a mascot to present the Nazi Party at its political rallies. Think about all the information you have learned about Hitler and the Nazi Party. You will create a colorful illustration of the mascot. Give the mascot a name. You will also write an explanation as to why the mascot was chosen to represent the Nazi Party. School officials were discussing the teacher's future. This assignment is not part of the approved material provided by our social studies department. It is not appropriate. This is coming from the school district spokesperson, Sloan Roach. Middle school teachers are responsible for educating students at a critical time of their lives. Well, yeah, bingo. They're still very young, but they're on the verge of being teenagers. The Georgia teacher attempted to taint her students. Her assignment treated Nazi and Nazism like they were something to be admired. Parents didn't send their kids to school so they could be lovingly exposed to Nazi culture. The teacher assignment was despicable. World War II should be taught with sensitivity and respect. Asking kids to draw what's essentially a Nazi cartoon is offensive. And it goes on in this. And this is part of training the children. This is part of, and I printed it and I didn't go grab it off the printer when we were at the break, but here it is, the Beware of the Useful Idiots article, which talks about Sal Alinsky's 8 steps to a socialistic state. Education is number, where's the drum roll? We should have had a drum roll. 6. Take control of what people read and listen to. Take control of what children learn in school. Some of these teachers have their own personal agenda, and obviously they have their own opinions, and they have the right to have their own opinions. But if you wonder what's being taught in school, you better pay attention. I know I had some kids that were being taught some things I didn't approve of when they were in school, and that's been a little while. So I'm sure it's even worse now, and so they haven't, the school didn't really apologize, and they haven't, it says here the education secretary, Betsy DeVoe, how do you spell her name? DeVos? Say her name, is despised among the left because of her support for the school voucher program. She wants to give families the chance to go to better schools. You know, that is something that I never understood. The Democrats claim to be all about the minorities and helping them, and yet they voted against this. President Barack Obama removed the school vouchers, so they don't have a choice. So the liberal left really aren't about choice. They're about control. They like the C word, but it's not choice, it's control. And here we have I'm
not sure I agree with those vouchers either, but...
You know what? I do. I think in certain areas, I think it's really going to be helpful. I don't know what we would do in rural America. There's not too much of a choice. You're going to have to go quite a ways to change the school. Because I went through that with one of my sons. He had some problems in school, and it was the teachers. I will not say that he was a perfect child. He was not. But they were labeling him and picked on him. And I think his success now shows that he was not the child they tried to make him out to be. But yeah, I think a choice is right. But anyway, they hate her.
But the thing of it is, you could move schools and you could have the same problem. You could have a teacher there, too. Right?
You could. Mm-hmm. That's why it's important to elect a good school board. Your school board is important. They're the ones that hire these teachers. And these teachers need to be held accountable, and they're not.
Well, yeah, I think it's a bigger problem than just vouchers. You know, and I don't think the vouchers are going to fix the problem.
That was just a part of the article, Melody. That wasn't.
Well, I know. I was just voicing my opinion where I didn't like that.
That was just that they hate her. The teachers union hate her. They hate her. They don't want school vouchers. They don't want to be held accountable for what they're doing. If a school loses its students, you know, all the parents decide, you know what, you're not doing us right. We're going to go somewhere else. Money talks. And they get paid per student. Their money that comes in from the state and the Fed, that they get paid per student, whether it's a bus route or the school lunches or how many books. I mean, they get paid per student, so it will make a difference.
So then it would then be like the universities, and it would be schools for profit.
Well,
I guess
profit.
You know, and
it already is that. They hire superintendents.
True.
By what kind of an education, how much money can they get us out of the federal government, which needs to go away.
Taxes.
That needs to go away.
And
well, not just property tax, because some states don't have it, but the grants and the perks that you get here and there if you do this or do that. Just like, you know, if you wear your seatbelt, you're going to get X amount of perks from the federal government. And that's what the seatbelt was all about. It wasn't about safety. We have a caller. We have Joe in Arkansas. Joe, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. And how are you, Beth?
Doing okay. What's on your mind?
Okay. Well, I had a couple of questions about the economy that I wanted to ask Melody, especially.
Okay.
And that's this. I've heard that the Federal Reserve is kind of puzzled about unemployment being down, but inflation, there doesn't seem to be significant inflation, that's what they're claiming. And they're puzzled why this would be. And so I was thinking about this. Why could that possibly be, if it is true? And so I was thinking about there was a former governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York named Beardsley Rummel, and he gave a speech in 1947 in which he said that taxes for revenue are obsolete. He said the federal government doesn't need our tax money anymore because the Federal Reserve can create all the money that the federal government needs. And so he said that the real reason for income taxes now are not that the government needs the revenue, but for one, social engineering by taxing certain behavior and not taxing other behavior. The government can engineer the behavior of the people. And number two, to keep inflation down by pulling purchasing power out of the economy. That way, that keeps inflation down. And so that's a clue that inflation happens when inflation is kept down when money is pulled out of the economy, is what he said tells me. And so I was thinking, well, what could be taking a lot of money out of the economy so that inflation is down? I thought of one thing that would be Obamacare. That's a huge new tax that's taking a lot of purchasing power away from the working people, I would think. So this could be keeping inflation down. Another thing would be pretty much everything we buy comes from foreign countries. So the trade deficit, all this money going out of the country every time we buy stuff, and that would be taking money out of the economy, so that would be keeping inflation down. And also possibly remittances, all these foreign workers sending money back to their own countries, taking money out of our economy. That could be another thing keeping inflation down. So I wanted to ask Melody question number one. Do you think that the factors that I'm talking about here could be the significant thing, keeping inflation down if the Federal Reserve is really right and inflation is down? And number two, second question is, I heard it just announced that the EPA under Scott Pruitt is taking away the regulations on coal, the Obama regulations, so there's going to be more coal production and more money coming into the economy of the coal-producing areas because of increased coal production, I would think. And also, I would think that because of this, the cost of electricity would be coming down to manufacturers, so that manufacturers will be doing better. So isn't this something that will be very good for the economy? So those are my two questions to Melody.
All right. For the first one, I think all those factors probably have some sort of an impact. I'm one that believes there is inflation. The core inflation or needs are higher and they continue to go up. And so I believe they look for this target of 2%, and all of those things would prevent it, but I think inflation is there. And I think when you're in a debt-based society, I don't think any of whether the arguments, the terminologies even apply anymore. Inflation, deflation, in a debt-based society, how can they all apply? So I believe what's going to happen because of this, eventually we will have a new entry, whether you could call it the dollar reset. You will have a new monetary system introduced. Whoever creates it will be named after, as they've done in the past. And until the system resets itself, that's why it's difficult sometimes to try to explain, to connect the dots, because it doesn't apply anymore. We've gotten way beyond the realm of reality here. We're when it comes to the economy and the numbers that are produced and the impacts. I was reading an article this morning about wages and what is the wages should be going up. Well, some of the arguments are saying, it's kind of typical that they wouldn't be going up because of the things that are happening in the economy. Just because there's jobs and so forth, and that's increased, everybody thought that should make wages rise. Well, it's not. People will say, well, globalization has impacted the ability for wages to rise. That's one. Overseas competition has prevented the wages from rising here in the States. That's another. It was, and I actually wanted to talk about that on my Thursday program. It's what I have a problem with. They know exactly. Janet Yellen knows exactly what's going on, and for her to say that she's confused. I mean, if you have and what's amazing is she comes out and says she's confused, and the stock markets go up. Now, how much confidence should that instill when you have the head of the USA Federal Reserve Corporation saying, I'm confused? To me, that doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence, and that's the only thing that keeps the system going. So, your second...
Well, yeah, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I can see why that would give people confidence if Janet Yellen is confused, and that would mean that the Federal Reserve is not so much in control of things, therefore she's confused. So if she's not controlling things, that could be very good for the economy.
Yeah.
That could be kind of encouraging, couldn't it? I like that, Joe. Oh.
And there was something I wanted to bring up about your coal, and I don't know if I can find it real quick here. We were actually going to talk about it on Financial Survival yesterday, but it is about the coal industry and their pension fund. I mean, it is a system. They are billions of dollars underfunded in their pensions. And so my question is, and I'm trying to pull it up here real quick to see if I can find it. And, whenever you're trying to look for something quickly.
That's when the computer decides, nah.
Yeah, I mean, some of these numbers of, I can't find it here about this coal industry. And a lot, let's see. Anyway, they're in deep trouble, and so any impact that has been passed that's good for the coal industry, might help. But all that money is going to be funneled into their pensions and so forth. So, again, they're not out of trouble. Hopefully with the increase of wages, jobs and the more money and more coal being used. But I still don't know if they'll go back to where they once were. It's a big question. I don't know exactly what all the EPA regulations were eliminated.
Well, I think technology will keep them from going back to exactly where they were at one time, because we have other sources now for energy. I still think we need the coal industry. I think we do, but
absolutely.
I know that the ironic thing was, they all want these big wind turbines, but they can't make those great big huge blades on those turbines without coal. So, that was kind of an ironic thing, I thought. But the coal industry will never be what it was once, but it can be better than it was here recently in the last many years when they had the war against coal industry. And really, we have the cleaner air. I don't know if you've had any. We ought to get somebody on to talk about the energy here in the United States. I used to have her on periodically, and I haven't had her on for a long time. I need to get her on, but we'll try and book her here too. But she's a really good source. That's all she studies, and she just became an advocate for the energy here in the U.S. And so she studies that. And but the coal industry won't be what it was once because it's not the main source anymore, but it definitely can do better than what it has been when it had a war against it. So
absolutely. And it's great questions, Joe.
Always. Thank you, Joe.
Did we lose Joe? Thank you, Joe.
We want to talk, before we run out of time, we want to talk about North Korea. You had some things on that.
Yeah, it was interesting because North Korea today, hackers from North Korea are reported to have stolen a large cache of military documents from South Korea, including a plan to assassinate Kim Jong-un. A South Korean lawmaker said the information was from his country's defense ministry. The compromised documents include wartime contingency plans drawn up by the U.S. and South Korea. They also include reports to the Allies' senior commanders. The South Korean Defense Ministry has so far refused to comment about the allegations. Plans for the South Special Forces were reportedly accessed, along with the information on significant power plants and military facilities in the South. The hack took place in September of last year. A whole year has gone by. In May, South Korea said a large amount of data had been stolen and that North Korea may have instigated the cyber attack but gave no details. North Korea denied the claim. So South Korea is saying, North Korea hacked into our military documents. North Korea is saying, no, we didn't. South Korea's Yonhap news agency reports that Seoul had been subject to a barrage of cyber attacks by its communist neighbors in recent years. North Korea has accused South Korea of fabricating the claims. And what truly is amazing is President Trump is supposed to be heading over to Asia. I think in November, I believe. Yeah. South Korea is supposed to be a stopping point. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe that they would actually be taking him, to South Korea, but it's kind of like a thumb in your nose at North Korea, I guess.
Yeah. It's scary right now with North Korea. They're so volatile and the way things are in this nation, because I'll tell you what, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I wouldn't put it past some of our elected officials to do something stupid.
Well, you'd have to define how stupid.
They do stupid every day.
They do stupid every day. But
we've had Democrat senators and representatives saying they wished he was assassinated, those kind of things. That's what stupid I meant. And the hate that's going on right now, because they are threatened. They are threatened. The American people elected somebody they didn't think could be elected because he's not one of them. And now the American people elected, at least in Alabama, they elected Judge Roy Moore. Senator Corker. He's not going to run, and he's on the attack. I think that was a foolish thing for him to do, attacking the president and saying all kinds of stupid things about him, about the president. And, that's the thing that bothers me. You and I didn't like President Barack Obama, and I hope I wasn't as disrespectful as what I hear going on right now. I know I didn't call him names and berate him, because I really think the man...
Not on the air, anyway.
Well, I really think, the left, the agenda, they have an agenda. They're very patient, and they push their agenda. He did things unconstitutional. It infuriated me. It's a threat to our republic. I don't want to say a threat to our democracy, because that's what they want to push, is democracy. It's a threat to the republic here in the U.S., which is against we the people. They don't want we the people to be the ones in charge. And we kind of lost a lot of footing whenever they changed that 17th Amendment, and we no longer, the states no longer appoint the senators. It's a popularity contest through an election, which is what they want to do. They want to get rid of the electoral vote and have a popular vote so that the big cities can control. If you win the big cities, you win an election. You don't have to even worry about the forgotten men and women out in rural America across this nation. And rural America is across this nation. We think about the flyover states, but there is rural and farming industry everywhere. So it's Senator Corker made these comments on the news on a radio show regarding the president. And so he's in trouble, and I got a feeling he's going to have a backlash. He knows he can't win the election, so he's going to retire. And the young woman that is going to, and I think I have that here somewhere, that is running in his place, No, I got that wrong. I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. She's in Arizona that she's running, and I want to talk about her as well. But I saw last night where Steve Bannon, they've declared war against these rhino Republicans, and they're going to replace them. And I have said for a long time, it's only the American people, the voters, that can actually drain the swamp. When we start electing men and women of integrity that believe in the constitutional republic, they stop spewing this idiocy about democracy and go on with the republic of the Constitution. We the people, we the people. When we start doing that on a local level, all the way up through the state and federal representatives and senators, that's the only way we're going to clear that swamp out. The only way we're going to clean the swamp out. But these senators, the arrogance that they have, does Corker not think that this is going to affect the rest of his life? Now, he's supposed to be a Republican, but he's one of those that has been on the Never Trump train, and he has not supported President Trump. There are others like John McCain. There are others like Lindsey Graham. There are so many. Paul Ryan. I got where Nellen is running against Paul Ryan again. We should get him on the air. He ran against him in the primary last election and lost. And Paul Nellen, he's come out and made a statement about, and he's kind of trying to hold these elected officials, the legislatures, accountable over the gun laws. In other words, don't be falling for this gun control stuff that's flying around right now in the conversation. But draining the swamp can't happen by one man in the White House. It's got to be the American people. You can see that right now with what's taking place. They don't want a wall. They didn't want to repeal Obamacare. They ran on all these promises, and they're not holding any of them, and they're not doing it because they didn't want to do it. I hear music. I'm sorry, Melody. I took that whole little last few minutes all by myself.
Right.
I'm sorry. We are going into a break. I'm going to give the number out again. It's 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. And Melody and Beth Ann will be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned to listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. We're in the final segment of today's show. We have had the phone lines open at 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. I haven't got scolded yet here, but I get scolded from time to time on CSC Talk Radio because I give those numbers out pretty fast. I have some information, and, sometimes you're not sure whether you should trust where things come from. But this one had several sources, and again, like we have said before, those sources just pass around the same one. But it looked pretty official, so I'm going to share it, and if it's not, please know I'm not trying to share fake news. I'm trying to open our eyes. But this has to do with the Las Vegas madman, Steve Paddock's transactions, and they were flagged for possible covert terrorism financing. This is all about the financing, and it's dating back to 2014. He goes on to say here that the Philippines has a huge terrorism issue, and Islam is the second largest religion in the country. It says why they have not mentioned Danley's religion, they haven't figured that out. Undoubtedly, Danley knows far more than she is willing to say. None of the details add up just yet. We're all sitting around waiting, and Melody's going to tell you, too, they're changing their story on some things. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the finance. That's kind of a switch, me doing the financial and you doing the other. Mm-hmm. It says here that as authorities search for motive, Paddock's finances have become a significant focal point, most notably 200-plus casino or wire transactions by Paddock that were flagged for review by FinCEN, that's F-I-N, capital C, capital E, capital N, the U.S. government's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is what that stands for, which collects data to identify potential money laundering or covert terrorism financing. The FBI is also reviewing transactions by Danley that were flagged by FinCEN. According to a source familiar with the probe, various transactions go back, they date all the way back to 2014 and are being vigorously investigated. The sources said one transaction that has drawn significant attention is a $100,000 transfer to the Philippines by either Paddock or Danley prior to Sunday's shooting. Danley was in the Philippines when Paddock opened fire on the crowd in Las Vegas. So I found this interesting. We'll have to just see what comes of this. Of course, ISIS has taken credit for it. They say that they don't have evidence that would be the case yet, but it looks to me like they ought to be accumulating some evidence as to what exactly has gone on, whether he is laundering money or whether he was financing some terrorism or was a terrorist himself as far as ISIS is concerned. So it's food for thought. Just keep that in the back of your minds.
Absolutely. We're going to continue talking about some of the information that was released, but we have a caller. We have Emmy in Missouri.
Emmy.
Well, Emmy, welcome to the program, Emmy.
Hi,
good morning,
I love
Emmy.
your program. Hey, I just have a question. I listen to a lot of the news programs, yours in the afternoon, all of them, and I'm not hearing that we're all of the schools, everyone is up in arms, and me too, regarding the socialist Marxist teachings that's going on from preschool all the way up through PhD programs. These are all federally funded to some extent, and no one is talking about basically how would you say, we need to change that whole system, and I don't hear anyone talking about that.
Well, it was a lot in the conversation when they, had the, I just lost my mind. I think it just rolled out the door.
Specifically is we need reform. We need political reform because I took a degree. I'm in my 60s, and I was a clothing designer. Then I decided to go back to school to become a therapist, and I got straight A's in a program to become a therapist, and I was appalled. I don't even use the degree. I'm doing something else now, but it's complete Marxist socialist training, 100%. Every book I paid for, every class I had, and I was in trouble with all my, that's why I didn't want to continue on, because I didn't want to work with people who were Marxist socialists.
Yeah. Well, wasn't one of the campaign promises to eliminate Common Core?
That was it. I couldn't think of Common Core.
Yeah, Common Core.
Common Core was a big issue, and that was coming out of the federal level.
And even the Department of Education, I know in previous campaigns and so forth, there was always a candidate or two that wanted to eliminate the Department of Education, and absolutely it needs to be either eliminated, reformed, or but again, it's the policies that they indoctrinate our kids.
Yeah,
do you remember?
Yeah, that's my concern. Go ahead.
Do you remember weekly readers?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, even in the weekly
whatever it is.
readers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even in the weekly readers when I was young, there was propaganda in it. I didn't recognize it when I was a kid, but I recognize it now, and it was even more so when my children were that age, were younger. So all these things, they just kind of sneak their way in. And again, the public school system needs to be local. It needs to be run locally. We were not designed as a country, as a nation, to be governed from dictators in D.C., Washington, or Maryland. And, it's, go ahead, Emmy.
Here's my concern, what happens in these programs, because like I said, I was in a master's program. I got straight A's, like I said. One of the things that happens is that if a person is pro-Marxist, if a person is a liberal in any of these courses, I saw kids that could barely write reports in a university level, and yet they were fast-forwarded into master's degree programs. They were liberals. And one of the main concern I have is that how we get people into the Obama holdover type agencies, it's people like this who are completely indoctrinated, and they are fast-forwarded, and they were literally given master's degrees, and some of them can't even write reports.
When I lived in State College, and I've told this story many a times, Penn State University, excuse me, I do a lot of shipping, and, you get to know the people at the post office and so forth. They become, friends. We discuss while they're shipping out the packages. We talked. And passports, they used to process the passports. And you'd have a lot of students, because it was actually outside of State College, the service was a little bit better. So you'd have a lot of the kids with their parents come to this particular post office that I went to in order to get their passports. Well, there were a couple of incidences that they told me about at the post office. These kids, Penn State University, they didn't know how to sign their names. They didn't know how to spell their middle names. They didn't know how to write their middle name. And I'm thinking to myself, no, you're kidding me. Because I said, look, quit pulling my leg, And the look I got was, no, I'm serious. This happens.
There was one girl in my program who she was very mouthy and very rude, very mean, very pretty girl. She said, I'm an illegal, I'm from Mexico City, and I'm here to become an attorney, so basically to continue amnesty. She was illegal. She was in school. She was completely funded, and she was planning on going to get, onto, getting her bar exam and everything. I heard things, I'm false. This was 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm still false.
Yeah.
Because I see what happens.
We have been invaded, have been invaded, as many would say, and not just by illegals across the border, but from within, where they have been teaching socialism which is basically communism.
Yeah.
They're teaching them to hate this country. We see that in the NFL, and it's obvious that people don't hold it to esteem. And, this middle school teacher that I talked about that was esteeming Nazism and having them make a Nazi mascot. Well, she's in trouble. Where's the school board? They've got a spokesperson for the school board, but that's why it's so important locally. And we need to break away from the federal government. We really do need to break away. Stop taking their money. And I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah, Antifa, a lot of those kids are paid. They're college students. A lot of them are college students, who are for the snowflake type generation. And
that's what they've been taught.
Professors coming. Yeah, and so because I happen to be in college, I'm literally so upset over it. Because people do not know.
You stand strong. You stand strong. And you stand strong and live your life and be the beacon. Be the beacon, Emmy. And appreciate it. It's good
Thank you, Emmy.
Good to hear from you, Emmy. We hear music.
I don't.
Free. You don't hear music? I hear music.
We're out of time.
We are out of time. We will see you tomorrow morning with Melody and Beth Ann on Power Talk.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.